Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast, Season 2, Episode 5 here today. I'm joined by Jordan. Once again, he was on Episode 1, a.k.a. J Chow on social media. How you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing fantastic. I've had a pretty good day at work. How are you doing today, Sage?
Oh, I'm doing good. I have a lot of new things for the podcast, so it makes it all quite interesting. Just making sure everything works is the big thing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that's always the first step. But so we're going to start off this episode with the sneaker check here. This is mostly a fantasy football episode. A lot of talk on NFL Week 1, fantasy talk, and all that. So we're going to start it off right here, like I said, with the sneaker check. And today I'll tell you what I'm rocking first. I got the Light Bone Gore-Tex Jordan 1s. I kind of like them. They're a winter sneaker. They're waterproof. It's a great thing. Jordan, what are you rocking?
We are rocking the Cyber Active Fuchsia Jordan 1 mids. They are, they're interesting to say the least, but I don't know, it was my first pair of ones I ever owned, so I kind of got a connection with them.
They're kind of, yeah, I don't...
They're nice. It's hard to match stuff with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this shirt doesn't really match because, whatever. It's pink.
Yep.
It's got a lot of pink on it, but you mostly need, like, a bright pink shirt.
Right. You got a lot to just...
Or even just, like...
Black and white.
Yeah, black and white.
Or white and black. Or black or white. Or gray. Something like that.
Something.
Maybe. Something like that. That'll work.
Yeah, they're interesting.
Yeah, pretty good, though. Looking at a couple of additions, and speaking of additions, I tried to get on the sneakers app on the 13th, I believe is when they dropped. The Brooklyn Off-White Air Force Ones retailed for $160, okay, on the sneakers app. And it's a drawing, so you have to enter the drawing, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get them, unfortunately, took the L. Now selling for $2K in my size. Yes, $2K, meaning $2,000. Is it just crazy to you, or is it just me?
It's ridiculous how something can retail at so low and then go for so much. It's like the Travis Scotts.
Yeah.
They retailed, the lows retailed at like 125.
130, I think, is what they were all at, or maybe 150.
I think the lows were around 130.
I think the reverse mochas were 150. So.
They're all like
in that area.
Yeah, like 120 to 200, and now they're going for God knows how much.
Too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Way too much. Those reverse mochas, for instance, they're down a little bit, $1,300 in my size. But
$1,300.
The fact is, like, anybody who's watching this that knows anything about sneakers, right? Reselling it's a name of the game now, and but to me, it's just ridiculous that somebody can make a quick profit of that much money on something, and so it's absolutely insane. So. But moving away from sneakers now, we'll get into like in-depth sneaker episodes. We said that in the episode 1. So far, it's just been a lot of NFL talk and some other topics like the misconceptions of high school sports that we talked about, so on and so forth. Talked about the Manti Te'o documentary, everything like that. So anything you guys want to hear about, make sure you guys direct message me on Instagram, official_locked in podcast. You guys can message me on there. Or my main account, and we'll talk about some topics you guys want. So,
or you can message me too.
Yep, J Chow.
Chow.
Your Instagram has the underscore, right?
Yes.
His Instagram has the underscore. His TikTok does not. It's JAY_CHOWE, right?
Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Where did you? So, just out of curiosity, I think I asked you this before, but now that we're on the podcast, where did you get that name from?
So, originally, like when I made Instagram and Snapchat and everything, I did my first 2 initials, so the JC, and then my last name, the How, with, 3s or 13 or whatever.
Yep.
And people in high school, there was a couple kids, they would come up, start calling me, they're like, dude, when I first followed you on Instagram and whatnot, I thought it was J Chow. And so that's kind of where it grew. So they took they put the C with my last name, and they just did that, so I just expanded it to JAYCHOWE, and that's pretty much my social media for everything.
Yep.
Snapchat, Instagram. I think it might be my Twitter one.
Yeah.
Even my PlayStation Network name is J Chow.
There you go. That's like me. I'm Sir Sage on everything, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I feel like I didn't know that story. I feel like I kind of heard about it, but I didn't. So
if you went to Grand Rapids Christian, If you're listening, shout out DQ and Tyrell.
Those
are the ones that it was
that
mostly
said that.
DQ, but yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, now that we got through that, let's get right into Thursday Night Football recap. Okay, so the first segment, we're gonna get right into it. We had the Chiefs versus the Chargers. It was it looked like the Chargers were gonna run away with this one early on. It ended up finishing out at 27-24 as the final for the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are still 2-0, or still undefeated, moving on. I was kind of surprised. Thought they were going to lose that one. Like I said, they didn't. And there's some key takeaways from the game. Jordan, would you like to start off with some of the Chiefs information?
All right, so we got at quarterback, Chiefs quarterback, Patty Mahomes. He was 24 for 35, 235 yards with 2 touchdowns. And for fantasy, moving into fantasy, he had a whopping 17.3 points, and he scored 34.9 last week. So, how do we feel about that? I know I have him on my fantasy team. That looked awful for me compared to last week when he was pulling in those 35 points. Yeah. So, that's my takeaway.
Yeah, are we honestly, the question I have up there is, are we concerned moving forward? And the big question mark, right, is who's better in fantasy relevancy, who's better overall, honestly, Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes outscored him by 3 fantasy points last week, and like we were just talking about, he scored 34.9 fantasy points last week compared to this 17.3. Chargers defense is a little bit better.
I think the Chargers defense they're up there in the league.
Yeah, they're definitely up there. So
they're a solid defense, and I mean, it was obviously a close game. So.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is, right, am I concerned moving forward? For Patrick Mahomes, no. I'm not concerned moving forward.
Not at all.
And then moving into the running backs here, so we have Jerick McKinnon, okay? He came over from the 49ers, and so he went last night, he only ran the ball 4 times for 12 yards on the ground. He had a receiving touchdown along with it, so that's where he got his points with the 9.6 fantasy points. CEH, on the other hand, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he had 8 carries only on the ground for 74 yards and a 4 for 4 in receiving for 44 yards. Ended up finishing with 15.8 fantasy points. And this is the question mark I have here, right? So which back do we want moving forward in terms of fantasy relevancy? Last week, Jerick McKinnon, he actually had 7.9 points. I remember that one looking back on it. CEH, on the other hand, he had 22. He had 2 receiving touchdowns last week. And so now we look at this, right? The receiving touchdowns goes to McKinnon, okay? But he only runs the ball 4 times. And then CEH, on the other hand, he runs the ball 8 times, only 4 receptions. So the question mark is, right, he still had good fantasy relevancy both weeks, okay? CEH. He had the 22, and then now he has the 15.8. So we sit back, we're going to say, okay, CEH wasn't somebody that people were drafting at the beginning of the year, right? Mm-hmm. So when we take a step back, are we looking at 8 carries as good? Would you consider that good? Because I'm considering that poor. And in my fantasy terms, right? So Jerick McKinnon actually outsnapped CEH last night in terms of, overall plays. Obviously, McKinnon's 4 to 8, so CEH outcarried him, by double the carries, but still 8 carries. Moving forward, I'm not very apt to have either one of them. In terms of fantasy, obviously, I think I would stick with CEH in terms of better fantasy value. McKinnon, on the other hand, though, he's getting a lot of the work, and he had the touchdown yesterday. So it's kind of a toss-up in the air. I would feel more safe starting CEH.
Yeah, I would feel more safe starting CEH too because, like you said, McKinnon coming from the 49ers to the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. The Chiefs are more of a pass-heavy offense. CEH, he got drafted there. He's been there. I think
he's been there for a while now.
Second year or something.
I want to say it's 3. I think I started fantasy 3 years ago. That's when I started.
Anyways, he has a feel for the offense. He knows he's not going to get that many carries since they're a pass-heavy offense. Mm-hmm. So, and McKinnon's still working into that because, the 49ers were about 50-50.
Right.
But, yeah, I would totally feel way more comfortable.
I would put him, though. I would put CEH as a flex option. Yeah. I want to put him as a RB1 or 2 moving forward. That's kind of scary to me. Go ahead and take the next one with Mr. Travis Kelce.
All right, kind of disappointing coming from Travis Kelce, but he was he had 5 receptions for 51 yards and whopped a total of 10.1 points. Am I worried about it? I'm not sure.
I would personally say, right, obviously with Tyreek Hill being gone. Okay?
Yep. So
it's a big factor of who's going to get the ball, and obviously Travis Kelce is the guy that he's going to be looking to more often. Okay, so am I worried with that production? Okay, as long as Travis Kelce is getting me, 10 points, this we would consider this maybe a bust week for him. Mm-hmm. But 10 points at tight end overall, man, in fantasy, as long as you're strong throughout, right, is not bad. So like last week, Kittle's been hurt, so I had to start Ertz. And he's still obviously a good tight end, but he only had two receptions, 14 yards, but he had a touchdown, so I got 11. And I was completely happy with that. So I would say the fact of the matter is that he still got 5 catches, right, for 51 yards in a tough game, that I am not worried. I'm not worried moving forward with Travis Kelce at all.
No, not at all. Like, I have him on fantasy, and it's like last week, I think he put up, I don't even remember. It was up there.
He had like 20, I think.
I think so.
Over 20. Last week. But yeah, I mean the Chargers on the other hand, right? So the Chiefs overall, they didn't look bad in terms of fantasy. Right. I'm not saying great, not saying bad. I'm saying in between. So I would say on the Chargers side, we had a little bit more of a good performance in fantasy relevancy, even though they did end up losing the game, right? So the Chargers, for instance, Justin Herbert went out there. He was 33 for 48. He threw the ball 48 times last night. Insane amount of times, almost comparative to Joe Flacco's 68 times that he threw last. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Joe Flacco threw for 68 times last week, which is insane. But anyway, Justin Herbert was the 33 for 48, 334 yards, and then he had 3 passing touchdowns. He did throw an interception that ended up being a pick 6, which was a pretty crazy 99-yard pick 6 from the Chiefs defense. So stout for him. Still finishes with 23.46 points. Pretty good performance in terms of fantasy, definitely. And then one key thing is Jordan moving forward, right? He banged up his ribs last night in the 4th quarter. And are we concerned about him moving forward? Just in terms of health, right? We got it. In terms of fantasy, I'm not concerned at Justin Herbert performing, right?
No, not at all. I feel like depending on the severity of him banging up his ribs, I feel like he'll be good next week, and he'll still be having. Since he's been drafted, he's had amazing games.
Yep.
He turned the Chargers program around.
Yep.
And so I'm not concerned about his health at all.
Not concerned. And then on the flip side, right, we got Keenan Allen, who's out. Yep. He played, unfortunately. He was my wide receiver 2 last week, and he played half the game. Went out with a hamstring injury. It was officially ruled out yesterday in yesterday's game. He's the number 1 wide receiver for Justin Herbert. So now who's the number 2? And I think we have this officially ruled as the number 2 wide receiver. We have Mike Williams going yesterday, 8 for 113 yards, a touchdown, 25.3 fantasy points. He had a quiet second half, though. That was all production he had after the 3rd quarter, like after the first few minutes of the 3rd quarter. So the fact of the matter is it safe to say he is the guy if Keenan Allen's out? I think that's a question that we can answer both yes, right?
For sure.
If Keenan Allen's out, he's the guy. And then if Keenan Allen is in, what is your question mark there? Do you think Mike Williams is one of those guys where you kind of just set him in the lineup and hope he has a good game? Because last week, he only had 2 receptions for 10 yards, 3 points. So it's like, and this is kind of the game we played last year with Mike Williams, if you had him on your team, is he started out last year tremendous, right? And then Keenan Allen just blew him out of the water pretty much the last half of the season in terms of fantasy value. So I would say moving forward, Mike Williams, as long as Keenan Allen is out, should be a wide receiver 1 or 2 for you, depending on who else you have. But then if Keenan Allen's in, he's a wide receiver 2, flex option, in my opinion. So
for sure.
What's the next one we got here?
So we got Palmer going 4 for 30 with a touchdown. He had 4 carries, 30 yards. That's
Joshua Palmer, wide receiver, the 4 for 30, right, in the touchdown. So he ended up with 13 fantasy points. He had a late touchdown to give him the points, and that's where I kind of have a question. Is like, well, as long as Keenan Allen's out, I think Palmer is the second wide receiver.
Yep, he's going to be wide receiver 2 next to Williams.
Yep,
next
but
to Mike Williams.
Again, 4 receptions for 30 yards is not good.
No.
If he didn't have the touchdown, his night wasn't going to be there.
Yeah,
but he ended up with 13. So if you guys picked him up off the waiver wire, you're probably happy with him getting that touchdown at the end and getting that 13 points. It's not horrible. Mm-hmm. And now one thing I can say moving forward, right, in the terms of our boy Justin Herbert, is if he is out moving forward, that means a lot more work for Austin Ekeler, right? Austin Ekeler was tremendous in terms of the passing game yesterday. So Ekeler was 14 for 39 on the ground. Not good, right? 14 carries for 39 yards on the ground is not good. But 9 for 10 in receiving for 55 yards, and that's where he gets all his fantasy points from, 18.4 fantasy points. So is he trending up after last week's 11.2 fantasy points?
I have a feeling I feel like more than likely he will. He's a top back, and
finished number 2 last year after Henry went down behind Jonathan Taylor.
Yep.
So, I mean, 11.2 fantasy points, in my opinion, from Eckler is not great. 18.4, and in the passing work he was getting last night. Incredible.
Yeah, that's
incredible.
That's more like him, especially coming off of being number 2 behind JT after Derrick Henry went out. He's easily top 5 running back.
Oh, 100%. So I would definitely sit here and say that Ekeler is somebody, especially if Herbert misses any time whatsoever, or even with Herbert, if he continues to play banged up, let's say we find something else about his ribs that we're not liking, right? Then we can move forward saying, well, Ekeler is going to be a major part of that. So I would honestly put Ekeler above CMC in terms of value moving forward, especially if Herbert is out or banged up, more so than we think he is.
Yeah, especially with his ribs, he's not going to want to pass the ball as much.
No, not at all.
They're going to rely on Austin Ekeler and his run game.
Yep, exactly. And so now it takes us into our next segment here, Jordan. We have the Week 1 boom takeaways. We're going to start it off with the running backs. Would you like to take this one?
All right. So for our Week 1 boom takeaways, we have the man, the myth,
the number
the
1
JT,
overall pick.
31 for 161 on the ground with a touchdown. And then he was 4 for 7 in the air for 14 yards. And he brought in 27.5 points. And he is back to RB number 2 overall right now.
Number 2 overall right now. So that leads me to the next one, right? Well, quick overview. 31 carries, insane, right? That's awesome from him, especially 161 yards on the ground along with that touchdown. The 4 for 7 is promising moving forward, right? At least he got looked at 7 times in the passing game. Great. 14 yards, not a problem. The receptions are we look to in terms of PPR scoring. 27.5 points, great. I'm happy with it. I have him in one of my leagues. Happy with it, right?
Yeah.
So, next one. Now, we're going to get into Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, right, over the past couple of years hasn't been he was the surefire number 1 2 years ago, and then he was picked up high last year as well. And now people are kind of sleeping on Saquon coming into this year's draft for reasons, right? You can't just sit here and ignore the past 2 years, same thing with CMC. But Saquon, he went off. He had 18 carries, so almost half, like 5 difference in half there. But of Jonathan Taylor's runs, he only had 18 carries, but for 164 yards on the ground, right? A touchdown, 6 for 7 in the air for 30 yards, and he had 33.4 fantasy points. He's the number 1 back right now after Week 1. Can he continue this trend?
I feel like he can. A lot of people have been sleeping on him because of his past injuries. So if he stays healthy, I think with the Giants line, the Giants are, they're turning around. They do not want to be dead last again.
And one thing I can say, right, they have Kadarius Toney, who's an athlete. They have Sterling Shepard, who's a pretty good wide receiver as well. They traded away Evan Ingram. So they don't really have tremendous passing game, and especially with Daniel Jones at quarterback.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if Saquon Barkley is going to be the guy.
Yeah.
So, what I say, can he continue this trend? 100%. If Saquon Barkley stays healthy, there is no way he does not continue this, right? And the fact of the matter is, I'm actually happy I have Saquon in one of our leagues. I'm happy with his 18 carries because 18 carries is right at the brink of that's perfect, right? If you're 20, between like 18 and 23 carries, that's perfect for me because then he's not overworked. Like, for instance, Jonathan Taylor is 31. In terms of fantasy, that's great, but you got to be concerned a little bit for terms of health, right? And that's what we saw a lot from Derrick Henry. That's what we saw a lot from CMC when they were getting hurt, over the past couple of years, is that they just are tremendous workhorses, which is good and really bad because in terms of fantasy, we'd love to see that as a manager for him. But then in the flip side, it's like, well, come week 5, he might not be playing. Right. So we got to watch that, and that's why I like Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley this year, I feel like he's going to succeed. So knock on wood for him, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully he's staying healthy.
Yep.
And then we'll be good completely from there. So you want to take this next one here?
All right. So next we have White Thunder, CMC.
White Thunder.
He was 10 for 33 on the ground with a touchdown. 10 for 33 right off the bat. It's not great.
Right.
Not great at all. But he was also 4 for 5 in the air for 24 yards. Total 15.7 points. And he's tied for number 17 running back right now. Would this be frightening to you? Or is it good news that the Panthers may have to cut down his workload a little bit?
If I have to sit back, right, and say, obviously, like you were saying initially, right, 10 for 33, that's horrible. If you have 10 carries, you only have 33 yards. That's not good. He was bailed out by the touchdown. Okay, the touchdown bailed him out completely. The 4 for 5 in the passing game, that's, in terms of CMC workload, that's low, right? 4 for 5. Only getting targeted 5 times from CMC. We're kind of like, if I drafted CMC, I'm kind of sitting back and I'm in the midst, right? Like I was just kind of saying about workload. Obviously, his workload wasn't there comparably to what he was in the past. And so the frightening part for me is that if CMC went that exact stat line that he had without a touchdown, then we are sitting here with a mega bust for CMC. Now, I put him in here on the the booms for this week for the terms of the touchdown, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. In terms of being frightened, I wouldn't say I am because I can only see his workload going up a little bit. He just came off of a missing majority of last season, so I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna wait on CMC a little bit. Mm-hmm. If he has a similar performance next week, this coming Sunday, then I'm gonna kind of be a little bit worried. For now, I like that they started him not in that workload that they did last season because that means to me that he is going to be trending up moving forward. So, yep. So, and the next one here, right? Same thing. Leonard Fournette. I drafted him. He is somebody to me that is a Derrick Henry in terms of his body type, right? Mm-hmm. He's a workhorse. Plows right through you. He was 21 for 127 on the ground, so that's really good, right? 21 carries, 127 yards. He was only 2 for 2 in the passing game, right? But he caught both of them, so that's good. 10 yards. And then he had 15.7 fantasy points. He tied for running back 17 with CMC, but without the touchdown. So in terms of looking at that, right, way better performance from Leonard Fournette. Passing work isn't always there for Fournette. I kind of like seeing that he already got two receptions, though. That's not bad. Caught both of them. But the terms of the fact of the matter is he had 127 yards. That's good. And the fact that he tied with CMC without a touchdown, really, really good moving forward. Is it safe to say he's a major role this year with Ronald Jones being out of the picture for the Buccaneers? Is it safe to say that Leonard Fournette is a workhorse this year for the Bucs?
Oh yeah, for sure. Kind of like I said with, I forgot what team I said with, but the Bucs they're a 50-50, with splitting up the pass and the run game.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't feel like Leonard Fournette will have as many, receiving attempts because
just like Derek.
All of, Tom Brady's targets that he already has.
Yep.
He's got Mike Williams.
Or Mike Evans.
Mike Evans, sorry. Mike Evans,
Chris Godwin is hurt now, so we got to look at his other options. He has Julio Jones.
He's got Julio now.
Yep.
But still, he's got
some guys.
He's got solid receiving targets, and he, like I said, they're a 50-50 run-pass offense. Yep. So I feel like Leonard Fournette will just keep going.
He'll just keep shooting.
He'll probably be maybe top 10, maybe top 5 this year.
Yeah, I anticipate him being he finished, I think, 6th last year, and that was with Ronald Jones there. So in terms of if he gets a workload and he stays healthy, I see Mr. Fournette being a top 4 running back. So, and I have no questions with that. I was happy I picked him up in the 2nd round in all of my drafts. I don't have him in one of my 3 leagues, so 2 out of my 3 leagues, I picked him up in the 2nd round. So looking forward to his role there. Now, in terms of the Lions, okay? If we look back in the Lions, they were on Hard Knocks this year. We get to see a little bit more in-depth look at the Lions team. So we see a lot that the Lions are high on DeAndre Swift, okay? And I think that's let's just step back and say, okay, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
As in terms of me having Swift. Well, would you like to read his stat line here? This was insane.
Yeah. So we got DeAndre Swift, 15 for 144 on the ground with a touchdown, and we got him 3 for 3 for 31 receiving yards and 26.5 points, and he is the number 3 back. That is solid, especially coming for a back out of Detroit.
Yeah, exactly.
Detroit, there's been times where it's like, they're not dead last, they're not at the top, they're right there in the middle, but lately it's been, bottom of the bunch. But I feel like with DeAndre Swift, and I mean, they got Jamal Williams too.
Who did well last week, even being the backup. So, but
I feel like they split up the snaps between them pretty well. Yeah. I feel like Jamal Williams is more of a receiving back compared to DeAndre Swift being, he's a workhorse.
Yeah.
You saw him. He's shifty. He can get through the line. He can hit those holes perfect, and he can just get, it was like maybe the 2nd play of the game, 51-yard rushing.
Yep.
He could have had a touchdown. He kind of hesitated a little bit to try to go for a stiff arm.
Yeah.
If he wouldn't have done that, just kept going,
probably would have scored.
It would have been a touchdown for sure.
No, 100%, man. And the fact of the matter is, right, DeAndre Swift, he had 3 less carries than Saquon Barkley, exactly 20 less yards. Okay, so that's great. The fact of the matter that he had 15 for 144, the touchdown obviously, and then got the work in the receiving game, caught all 3 of them. Moving forward, I'm all in on DeAndre Swift if I have him, right? And mostly everybody who picked him was in the 1st round. Okay, so if you not wasted, right? If you used a 1st round pick on DeAndre Swift, I think you are happy, and I would continue to definitely keep him in as a must start moving forward. So.
Yeah, and his stat line right there is ridiculous. Coming from if you were watching the Lions and Eagles game on Sunday.
Yep.
The Eagles were number 1 for rush defense.
Yeah.
And seeing that out of DeAndre Swift makes you kind of think if the Eagles' defense is kind of gone down a little bit. Because, like I said, Lions, you don't think of anybody good coming out of Lions.
No, not at all.
But that with DeAndre Swift, he deserves that number 3 spot.
100%. And I'm happy with that moving forward. Not happy if I play him, but happy for him and anybody who drafted him. On the flip side, right, we got Javonte Williams. He was 7 for 43 on the ground. Not great on the ground, right, for a running back out of the Broncos. But with my boy Russell Wilson being there now, that they're going to be getting some passes to him as well. So he goes 11 for 12 for 65 yards in the receiving game. The fact of the matter is that he got 12 targets, caught 11 of them. That's what got his 19.8 fantasy points. Okay, so that's absolutely insane. He's back number 13 after week 1. Is Javonte Williams the guy in Denver? Is it safe to say that? Or do we, can we not count out Melvin Gordon?
See, with the Broncos getting Russ, he's a passer. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really rely on the run game.
Nope.
I mean,
he can move. He can run himself.
He can move. He can run himself. When he was in Seattle, they had pretty solid backs. But with Denver, they haven't really had solid backs. You know, they got Melvin Gordon.
Melvin Gordon's
He
been
kind of
solid.
washed out after he left the Rams when the Rams were solid.
Yep.
But after that, he wasn't great in Denver. He hasn't been great in Denver. Javonte Williams, he has been on the come up. I mean, the 7 for 43 on the ground, it's not the best.
No, but only 7 carries.
Right, yeah. But 11 for 12 in the passing game, that's great for a running back in a pass-heavy offense now with Russ.
So if you had to answer this question of, are we counting out, or are we going to leave him in the talks as, you know, the official guy?
For sure.
The only thing I'm going to question here is, will he get that much, you know, passing work moving forward? Because that's 12 targets is a lot for a running back, you know, in any offense you're in. As we see in a lot of the other ones, they're getting targeted at max like 7, right? And he gets 12, catches 11 of them, great. And that's where he gets bailed out in terms of fantasy. So moving forward, I think he's a set it and forget it. Melvin Gordon did solid. He ended up, I think, finishing with 8 or 9 points. I can't remember exactly now. But yeah, so I mean, in moving forward, I'm going to say Javonte is going to be the guy. I think it'll progressively, you know, he'll progressively be getting more carries too. 7's not great. The passing work we love in terms of PPR. So that is tremendous. And then if we look in Joe Mixon, okay, he was a great back last year. I think he finished 4th overall. So not too many people actually give him the credit he deserves. And now this is the stat line where we all kind of just step back and say, wow, these are Derrick Henry type carries, right? He had 27 carries on the ground for 82 yards. So in terms of, you know, conversion rate, that's not great. 82 yards on 27 carries. But he was 7 for 9 in the passing game for 63 yards, finishes with 21.5 fantasy points. It finishes back number 9 after the first week. Great passing value, right? Great workload on the ground. How should we feel about the amount of work that he is getting, though, moving forward? Is this concerning, or is this like, you know, Joe Mixon's going to be fine as long as he doesn't get hurt?
I feel like he's going to be good. They might, you know, cut him back a little bit. I feel like they're trying to rely run heavy against the Steelers. Steelers probably number 1 defense entire league.
One thing we got to look back at too, though, is Joe Burrow threw how many interceptions? 4 or 5.
He had 4 interceptions and he dropped a fumble.
That's right.
So I think that's why they were trying to rely on Joe Mixon for that run game.
There you go.
That's why he got so many carries.
Yep.
But with the Steelers' front line, their defensive line, and their linebackers, they're not going to let that run get through that easy. Obviously, 100%. You can tell by his stat line.
Yep.
But, yeah, it's just I feel like they were trying to rely on him a little too much this past week.
Yep,
against
and that's
the
why
Steelers.
they lost. Even though with that stat line, right, that's a lot of carries, a lot of work in the passing game. They still lost to the Steelers, which I didn't predict. I had the Bengals winning that one. You know, if you were in the Super Bowl last year, you lost week 1. so
the Rams did too, but that's a different story.
Crazy. That's crazy. But you know, I want to take this next one here, right? Moving away from Mixon, I think he'll be all right. Moving forward, as long as he stays healthy. So this next one here is crazy to me, okay? The fact of the matter is the Browns have 2 elite running backs, okay? So we have Nick Chubb, who is 22 carries for 141 yards on the ground. He was only 1 for 1 in the passing game for 2 yards. He ended up finishing with 15.3 fantasy points. He's back number 19, and that's crazy with the amount of work, right? With 22 carries for 141 yards, finishing back 19 in terms of fantasy, obviously because he didn't have a touchdown. Okay, so that's the only reason. Well, if we look on the flip side, we have Kareem Hunt, who rushed 11 times for 46 yards on the ground. He had a rushing touchdown, and then he was 4 for 4 in the receiving game for 24 yards and a receiving touchdown, so 23 fantasy points, and that put him as the back number 4 right now after week 2. So how should we approach this Browns backfield after week 1, being that the main guy gets less fantasy production than, you know, the quote-unquote backup?
Yeah, so I feel like without that touchdown, Kareem Hunt would not be at number 4.
Well, being that he got a rushing and a receiving touchdown.
Yeah,
that's
so even without either one of them, I feel like he still wouldn't be at number 4. And if Nick Chubb got that rushing touchdown, he would be up there. Nick Chubb, top running back.
Oh,
in my
I mean,
opinion.
the stat line is
yeah,
insane.
his stat line is ridiculous. And, I mean, Jacoby Brissett, he's not very good in the passing game.
No.
He showed that everywhere that he's been.
So
So they're going to rely on those two a lot, and I feel like it's going to be about even every week. Usually,
let me ask you, obviously they're going to use them. The Browns are going to use both of them.
yeah.
Okay. Now, the fact of the matter is, right, 19-4, that's a big difference in terms of fantasy backs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's 15 spot different. So I just made a trade. I don't know if you saw it in our league with Ashton. Okay. I made a trade. I traded him Zeke and DK for Deontay Johnson and Kareem Hunt. Now, I think it's a fair trade, being that it's kind of up in the air with how any of those guys are going to continue to move forward.
Yep.
I felt like doing it because I wanted a good another wide receiver. I think Deontay Johnson did really well. He was caught 7 balls out of 12 targets. He only finished with 12.5 fantasy points though, because no touchdown. Okay. Now I have Kareem Hunt on my bench this week. Looking back on the stat line last week, being that he finished number 4, it's hard for me not to play him at flex, right? But I'm going to wait. I'm going to keep him on my bench, and that's just being the fact of I don't think he will get 2 touchdowns this week, and you never know, because I remember watching last year, and I talked with Snodgrass, right, Caleb, that it's ridiculous that the Browns will just let Nick Chubb, churn up those yards, so you can always rely on Nick Chubb with the yards. But in terms of getting down to the goal line, they seem to put Kareem Hunt in to finish the drive out with a touchdown. So fantasy managers, right, and that's kind of why I avoided Nick Chubb in all my leagues this year. I had him in 2 leagues last year, and this year I didn't pick him up in any, and that's because he always gets the yards, but he's not a receiving back, as we can tell, right? 1 for 1.
Yep.
And he just doesn't get the touchdowns. It's horrifying because he gets so many yards every single week. I think Nick Chubb is one of the best backs in the league, no doubt. But then you get Kareem Hunt, that's the quote-unquote backup, and he gets both of the touchdowns in receiving and rushing. So I don't know. Moving forward, I think we can for sure put Nick Chubb in there, and hopefully he runs for a 50-yard touchdown run or something, right? Because if they get close to the goal line, you don't know if he's going to get it. But Nick Chubb's a for sure lock. I would say, after Kareem Hunt's performance last week, he's a wide receiver 2 or a flex option in terms of fantasy. Yeah. I'm not starting this week just strictly because I'm having, I have Tyreek and I have Deontay Johnson as my 2 wide receivers now, and then I'm putting Michael Thomas in at the flex because Michael Thomas had a good week. We'll talk about that. It's just hard. It's a hard evaluation. I feel like if you have Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt, you're safe to put both of them in because of what you were saying, with Jacoby Brissett not being a passer. So, and the fact of the matter is, if we look, right, 11 rushes from Hunt, 22 from Chubb, that's only 33 carries. I was expecting more out of both of them, honestly. Mm-hmm. Being the fact of they can't throw the ball very well. So I think moving forward, those productions from both of them is only going to shoot up. So that's great there. And then you want to start off, we're going to take on the wide receiver core now.
All right.
Read off that what we got here.
All right. So we got our wide receivers that boomed this week. Starting it off, we got Tyreek. Tyreek is still Tyreek. Mm-hmm. He was 8 for 12 for 94 with 18 points. To me, I feel like that's a little less than what he's performed in the past.
Yep.
New team, new quarterback. They're not, they don't have the connection like him and Mahomes had. Tua doesn't have the arm that Mahomes had.
Exactly.
But
I think being the fact of he has Tua, like the stat line just said, right? And like what you just said, Tyreek is still Tyreek.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like we're safe moving forward. And I was kind of scared, being that I picked him up in our money league, But now seeing that he was targeted 12 times, that just shows you that he's probably going to be the number 1 guy for Tua. And I don't know why not. The fact is, we just got to hope Tua can get him the ball. And he did decent with it. And now going back to the Michael Thomas thing, right? Is Michael Thomas back? He was 5 for 8 for 57 yards. Not good, right? Not in terms of, receptions. 5 is all right. But for 57 yards, he got bailed out on 2 touchdowns. Ended up scoring 22.7 fantasy points. So answer that question for me. Is Michael Thomas back? I'm starting him at flex this week. I don't know. I don't know if he's back.
It's tough to say because, he's been, the past couple years have been injury, and this is like the first year he's been
He was
healthy
week one
last
last year.
And I don't think he's played, I think this is the first year playing without Drew Brees. Mm-hmm. So he's still getting used to Jameis Winston.
Yep.
And I feel like once they build their connection up, it's going to be real good for the Saints. But, yeah, I think Michael Thomas is coming back. He's definitely going to be wide receiver 1 for the Saints.
100% And then another good one, Jarvis Landry.
Yep.
He finished with over 15 points last week. He's the wide receiver 2, I think. In terms of, back and forth, I think Thomas will be the guy. And if he's covered, which will happen against corners, right? Corners will key on him. Mm-hmm. I think Jarvis is a good wide receiver 2 for them to have.
Yep.
So.
And then sticking with the Saints, receiving core, I was real surprised when I saw it. Nobody picked up Taysom Hill.
I was going to say
he's been bouncing around the Saints for, quarterback, receiver, whatever.
Yeah.
They had him at tight end.
Yep.
And he pulled in, I'm not sure his exact stat line.
I think he only had 2 catches, but he rushed for quite a bit.
Yep. So I think he had a total of 15 points.
Yeah, he had, I think, 15.8 or something like that. The one thing with that being Taysom, right? That's going to be so unpredictable. That's the main reason, because there's so many other good tight ends that we can rely on.
Yeah, and the Saints haven't decided where they're ever going to put him at.
No, if Taysom stays there, I wouldn't say put him in, okay? And that's just because I can see him getting a 16 points, this week, and then this coming week, this Sunday, I feel like he could drop a 2-pointer, So
yeah.
I don't think Taysom Hill is going to be somebody that we can rely on in terms of those numbers moving forward.
Yeah. So Taysom Hill's stat line: receiving, 1 for 1 for 2 yards, 0 touchdowns. Rushing, 4 attempts, 81 yards, 1 touchdown for a total of 14.5 points.
Well, that just shows you right there, right? He really didn't have that much production. In terms of, he got the touchdown with he obviously had a long
rushing,
run.
Yep.
Yeah. So is that reliable in terms?
No, not at all.
No, not at all. So the next one, right? This is something that I step back and I'm like, wow. I picked up A.J. Brown in the second round in two of our leagues. I don't have him in the money league. I wish I did. But A.J. Brown, is he the guy in Philly? 10 for 13, 155 yards, 25.5 fantasy points, and we got to also quote Devonte Smith, 0 points. So what are your thoughts on this? I think it's honestly safe to say now, Jalen Hurts being a quarterback, he's pretty good. A.J. Brown is the guy in Philly.
See, I feel like, week 1, they played the Lions. Mm-hmm. Lions secondary isn't the best.
Not good.
But they had their best corner covering Devonte Smith the whole game. Mm-hmm. So that's why he didn't get as many targets.
Yep.
And even the targets he did have where he had separation and could catch them, he dropped them. Mm-hmm. So I think his nerves are getting to him. It's his second year in the league.
Yep.
A.J. Brown, he's the vet. So he's probably going to get targeted a lot more than Devonte Smith. I know I had Devonte last year. He was solid last year. The Eagles didn't really have much for the passing game last year besides him, and I don't remember who else they had.
Goddard, probably that's about it.
I think so.
Goddard did all right, not great,
but A.J. Brown is, I feel like if Devonte Smith, if they're playing, not very great secondaries, which is kind of difficult in the league now, but I feel like there will be a 50-50 with them. It's going to be close between 1 and 2.
I think moving forward we can see more from Devonta. Obviously, being the fact is that he got 0 points this year, you can only go up, or this week, you can obviously only go up from that. I think A.J. Brown, that's where our opinions split a little bit. I think A.J. Brown is going to be the guy, and if I had to give him a split, I'd say 75-25 in terms of Brown being the more production. It'll be close. Go ahead and take the next one.
So, the man that made my fantasy week is Devonte Adams, unstoppable. 10 for 17 for 141 yards and a touchdown for a total of 30.1 points.
Yeah.
He is insane.
Yep. No, I said this in the beginning, and you can go back and listen to it. I said Derek Carr is a good quarterback. You can't deny it.
Not at all.
And Devonte Adams came in to somebody that they have Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's apparent with 17 targets that he is going to be extremely valuable moving forward.
Yep.
And obviously, he caught only 10 out of 17, still for 141 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Devonte Adams, if I had to say anything else moving forward, he's just going to probably – I think he has the capabilities of outscoring every other wide receiver moving forward. So
for sure.
Just because of terms of value, he's a great route runner. I don't see too many people being able to stop him. When he was with Rodgers, right, every game it seemed like he was getting tremendous value.
Yep.
So Devonte Adams, I would start him every single week no matter who's guarding him. I don't care if you have, Deion Sanders came out in his prime. I'm starting Devonte Adams.
Yeah, for sure. He's
definitely
going to find a way. With his route running ability, he's going to find a way to get that separation.
Yep. So is he unstoppable? Yeah.
For sure.
100%. And another one, I think you have him, right?
Yes, sir.
Is Amon-Ra St. Brown the beast in the Detroit Lions that they need, right? That the Detroit Lions need. Is he the beast?
Yes,
and he was 8 for 12 for 64 yards. In terms of yardage, it's not great. He ended up having a touchdown, which kind of saved him a little bit. 20.4 fantasy points. Not the best, definitely not the worst. But 8 receptions, being targeted 12 times by Goff. Goff is not a horrible quarterback, right? We can't sit back here and say that he's bad. Amon-Ra is going to be the guy in Detroit. The only question I have is what happens when he gets shadowed. I think we got to wait and see on that.
So, watching the game, I know they had Darius Slay covering him most of the time because he is wide receiver 1 for the Lions.
Yep.
But getting DJ Chark, however you say his last name,
yep,
from the Jags.
That was a smart decision.
He was wide receiver 1 on the Jags, and when Amon-Ra wasn't open,
Chark was.
Yep. He
got a touchdown.
Go-to, yep.
So, honestly, I think both of them are going to be good uses. I would say Amon-Ra right now, to answer the question. I think he is the beast in Detroit.
Yep, he is.
Besides Swift, right? In the receiving core, definitely the beast. I'd say he's a wide receiver 1 or 2. I'd say Chark is a flex option. And I think that's fair to say after their performance there.
For sure.
So, what about the next one? What do you think?
So we got, is Pittman Matt Ryan's guy? We have Michael Pittman Jr., 9 for 13 for 121 and a touchdown with 27.1 points.
Yep.
I feel like Pittman...
Is he Matt Ryan's guy?
He is, because, T.Y. Hilton, he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't done very much the past few years.
I don't think they have anybody else.
No, Michael Pittman is a great receiver.
Yeah,
he started showing up last year, even though they had Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. Carson Wentz, not the best quarterback.
I think Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz are comparable in terms of how good they are. Matt Ryan has proven himself way more, obviously. He's a veteran. He won't choke under pressure. Yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan, Pittman, I think that connection is going to only continue to grow from here.
For sure.
And being the fact is, he scored 27.1 fantasy points week 1, targeted 13 times, caught 9. Great.
Yep.
So, Pittman, Ryan,
that's your guy.
That's your guy. And the last one here, I don't even need to say the stats because, well, there's only one on here that didn't tremendously exceed him, right? So I'd say Kupp, Jefferson, Chase, Diggs, they're all studs, right?
Yep.
You better have him in there as your wide receiver 1. If you're not, whatever. I also put Debo on there. He did not have the great production, right, that he was projected. I think he had 12.9 fantasy points. But after last year, right, you kind of see, he started to get the same production, and it was in a monsoon game with the Bears. And they ended up losing, okay? And he still got that production. He had a rushing touchdown. Debo moving forward, I'm all in on Debo still. And I think every single other person that I just stated, yeah, I mean, they're all studs. So you better put them all in your lineup. If you're not, you're absolutely insane. So.
Yep.
And now, the next segment we're going to have here is something that I'm going to create each week for fantasy. Scared to Boom. Okay, that is the segment I'm going to go with here, is Scared to Boom. And we can just read them off individually. We'll go back and forth here. You can take the first one. Go ahead.
All right, so first off, we have Aaron Jones. If you don't know, Green Bay running back, 10.6 points.
Yep.
That is not good.
That's not what you're looking for out of Aaron Jones.
Exactly. Coming from his, solid 25 to 30-point games pretty much every week last year.
Finished strong last year.
Yeah, he was top 10 running back last year, and that was coming from, Aaron Rodgers also having Devonte Adams.
Yep.
So I feel like without Devonte Adams, they're going to rely on him a little bit more. Mm-hmm. The Packers did awful. They played
Aaron Rodgers did horrible. Absolutely horrible.
So I feel like moving on, if the Packers can, get back to not having Devonte, they can get to where they can get used to not having Devonte and relying on the run game more, Aaron Jones he'll spike back up.
Hopefully we see Aaron Jones not on the Scared to Boom list and on the other list.
Moving forward,
the booms of week 2. So Aaron Jones, hopefully we don't see you next week on the list. Next one, Alvin Kamara. Now, if you drafted Alvin Kamara, you're expecting 20 plus usually. At least 15 plus each week from him. He got 7.6 fantasy points last week, and that's partially because Michael Thomas is back. Jarvis Landry played out of his mind, and he just didn't play that great. So if we had to take a step back, Kamara 7.6 fantasy points is absolutely horrible from him. So is he Scared to Boom? Because I want to see him. I don't have him, but if I have him, I want to see him go off this coming week for insane amount of points against a tough Buccaneers team. Mm-hmm. So the problem is I have a tremendous feeling that Scared to Boom, we're gonna have Kamara on there next week as well, because you play the Bucs, dude. It's hard to be a great running back against them.
See, my thing with that for Kamara, I feel like the Saints are going to rely on him next week this coming week for the Bucs, because the Bucs secondary is elite. Mm-hmm. And just having Jarvis and Michael Thomas coming back, I feel like Jameis Winston and the Saints offense is going to rely a little more on Alvin Kamara.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a smart idea, and they should use him in the passing game, and that's a big part of Kamara's game. Passing game, right?
He's a great passing running back. He's a great, on the ground running back as well.
Yep.
So they need to rely, I feel like a little more this week, they need to rely on him on the ground.
I agree with your statement. I still think, if I had to say it, I still think I'm going to see him in the Scared to Boom next week. If I have him, I'm praying that he does or he gets the work that you were saying, which I think they need.
Yep.
All right.
So next we have Najee Harris with 10.6 points.
Not what we're looking for, right? From Najee Harris. 10.6 fantasy points is not good. He was tremendous in the passing game last year. One thing I have to note on here, right, is he was out with a foot injury after the first half. So 10.6 fantasy points in relevancy to the first half, that's good. He would have had way more. Yep. Now the only question I have is what is it looking, in terms of his health moving forward, in terms of his workload moving forward. I wouldn't be stressing out yet, right? Just make sure he's healthy. If he plays this week, I think he'll have a good week against the Patriots. So I think he'll have a great week that way. I also think Deontay Johnson and the rest of the receiving core for the Steelers will do well this week as well. So I'm not too concerned. I put him on the Scared to Boom list because, again, 10.6 you're not looking for from him, right?
No, especially. So. I mean, I can see it with, having the second half foot injury.
Yep.
That makes sense why he didn't have more than 10.6 if you're leaving in that half and not coming back in. But he's one of those players, being a young player, being on the Steelers are a great team. I will admit they are a great team moving forward. Their quarterback situation, I'm not too sure about.
Trubisky and Pickett, yeah. So that's the one question in
I feel like they made the wrong choice with Trubisky. He wasn't great on the Bears.
We'll see moving forward.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see how he does moving forward.
I have a feeling it'll be kind of like a Lance and Garoppolo situation where Trubisky kind of mentors Pickett into being the starter. So we'll see. I'm not out on Najee at all right now. I just a little bit worried on if he gets injured. So next one, I put him on here because, again, Dalvin Cook, when he's healthy, you can expect 20 plus, in my opinion, from him. He finished with 13.8 fantasy points. It's not bad, but it's not what I'm looking for if I drafted Dalvin Cook. So I don't know. Would you agree that that's a scared to boom performance, or would you say that's I'm not horrified?
That's like, well, coming from, Justin Jefferson's performance with Kirk Cousins in the backfield.
I was going to say the same thing, right?
That's one of the scariest duos that you have in the NFL.
Yeah. So he's got to share production with that.
Yeah. So he's got to share production with, I'm going to say, top 3 quarterback receiver duo in the league right now. 13.8, that's not awful. But, yeah, like I said, he's sharing with one of the best duos in the league. So he's trying to keep up. Don't get me wrong, Dalvin Cook, great running back. Love him. I've had him in the past. He does amazing. 13.8 is on the lower side of what he's capable of.
Right. I think he's capable of 20 plus each week.
For sure. But like we were talking about, trying to split that production with Justin Jefferson.
It's going to be hard.
And Kirk Cousins. And even with, Adam Thielen, he's not the top receiver anymore.
He'll be on here as well.
Yeah, he's not horrible now, but that is on the lower side for Dalvin. And I expect to see him going up a little more.
I don't expect to see him on Scared to Boom too often.
Not at all.
The only reason I think he, again, 13.8 is not bad. So, but only got 13.8 fantasy points is because Justin Jefferson had a tremendous week. For sure. So, if Justin Jefferson ever struggles, you can expect a lot more from Dalvin. And if you put him in a role like the Browns, where they don't have a quarterback and they don't really have. They have Amari Cooper, but they don't really have a quarterback, right? If you put Dalvin in that type of offense, he would go off as well. For sure. That's the only question mark, man, is just trying to share that production. So, go ahead.
Next, we have the absolute most disappointing running back performance at all. Derrick Henry with 8.2 points.
Let me say something before you get too upset, because I drafted him first overall in our TikTok league. And that's because I feel like Derrick Henry is going to have a bounce back year this year. Okay, we got to remember. Okay, in terms of PPR, we're hoping Derrick Henry's going to score at least one touchdown every week, because Derrick Henry is tremendous on the ground, and that's what he got his 8.2 points from, was on the ground. He had 82 yards, so that's where he gets 8.2 points. Yeah. Now, if he scores a touchdown, he's not on here, right?
I don't know.
So
not at all.
I'm not going to freak out yet, and I picked Derrick Henry as my go-to guy this year. I'm not freaking out at all. I'm 100% in on Derrick Henry. Just a very bad week 1 to start for him.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but I don't expect to see Derrick Henry back on this list.
No, I don't either. And I hope, moving forward, in terms of my prediction, in terms of me having him in one league, I just hope that he stays off the Scared to Boom list. Yeah. So, but King Henry, still not a bad performance with 82 yards on the ground. No. Next one, Josh Jacobs. He is a guy that faded out last year with Kenyon Drake there. Okay. He started out really hot, had an injury. Kenyon Drake kind of took over. Kenyon Drake is no longer there, but Josh Jacobs only had 8.3 fantasy points still. So, and I thought about taking him in our drafts, but then I kind of had that that flashback to last year, because I had him last year in a couple of my leagues. He just didn't do that great. And Josh Jacobs is a guy out of Alabama that you can expect to be a tough runner, but again, fantasy-wise, I'm not high on Josh Jacobs this year.
No, honestly, it's kind of looking at the same thing with Dalvin Cook, with Kirk Cousins and
Carr
Justin Jefferson.
And Adams.
Yeah, so Josh Jacobs has to get that split with Derek Carr, Devonte Adams.
Yep.
So now they got Devonte Adams, top receiver in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change my mind about anything.
Yep.
Best receiver. So it's really just the Raiders trying to figure out how to merge those two together, try to split that.
I think what
run.
you said is spot on with the Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and the Josh Jacobs and the Devonte Adams. I mean, the only thing I would say about Dalvin Cook has a lot more talent.
Yeah.
And a lot more upside. So Josh Jacobs, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and gets a touchdown and ends up scoring close to 20 this next week. But I would say Jacobs is a flex play for me right now. I wouldn't say he's a running back 2 right now. So, but we'll keep an eye on him. Hopefully we don't see him on Scared to Boom too much. But he's on there this week.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be on here too much. I feel like with him and Dalvin Cook, they'll be once the offenses start to figure out,
It's week 1.
Yeah,
it's week 1.
They're going to start to figure it out, get to rolling with the splits for them for the run game and the pass game.
Yep.
And I feel like they'll be great. So next we have Ezekiel Elliott, a.k.a. Zeke. 5.9 points. The Cowboys are awful this year.
Let me say something here. So he had 10 carries for 59 yards. That's not horrible. Okay, and that's once again where he got his 5.9 points from. Now, one question I have is Zeke's value going to go through the roof, being that Dak is out for at least 4 weeks now? Because I think if I had to answer my own question before you answer here, I'd say Zeke's value is going to be tremendously higher than that, right? I wouldn't say he's still going to be a great running back. I feel like after last year, you see him. Dak didn't play a lot last year either. He's on the low. He's on the low. I don't know if he's in a slump or what, but Zeke is not the same Zeke he was.
No, especially for being an Ohio State caliber running back. I feel like depending on who the Cowboys' backup is that's taking over for Dak, it's real tough to say how well Zeke will do coming up. I'm not having high hopes for him, but I don't think he'll do as bad as he did this week moving forward. So it's just it's a coin flip pretty much.
Same thing with the next one on the list, CD Lamb.
Yeah.
4.9 fantasy points, right? Same situation. Dak's out. I don't know if I was one of those guys. I didn't get him in any of my leagues. But I was one of those guys that was high on CD Lamb coming into this year. Being that Michael Gallup was hurt and Amari Cooper was out of the picture, I feel like CD has tremendous value moving forward, and he's going to be the guy for him. But with Dak being out, I'm not happy with having him in there as a wide receiver 1 or 2.
Yeah,
he's still a flex play because he is CD Lamb, but 4.9 points. That's something I can see. I can see him being under 10 until Dak comes back. So that's the scary thing. We just have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, I feel like with the Zeke thing, it's real dependent on who the backup is.
Yep.
I don't even know who their backup is right now.
I honestly don't even. It was Andy Dalton last year, right?
I think so.
I don't even remember exactly, but I believe so. So. I don't know. If Dak's out,
no, because I think Andy Dalton's at the Bears now because he started before Justin Fields took over last year.
Yeah, I don't know who's there now.
We're gonna have to find that out when we figure this out.
Yeah, go and check that out quick. See the value we got there as a backup, because I just can't see it, man. I can see Zeke's value going up, quite a bit. I can see CD's going down quite a bit. So. Who do they got?
See, Cowboys confidence that backup Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush. Who is that?
I've
heard of him. Oh, he's been their backup there for a while, I feel like. Hasn't he?
I'm not sure.
All right. Well, let's just move away from the Cowboys because, again, I think you were right when you said that they're disappointing this year.
Yeah,
and I can see them continuing to disappoint moving forward.
Hey. So next on the list outside of CD, we have Amari Cooper with 4.7 points.
That's something we can expect, right? Being that he's got Jacoby Brissett there.
Yeah, Jacoby's not a very good passer. Like,
I don't know.
I feel like if they still had Baker at the Browns, Amari Cooper wouldn't even be close to this list.
Oh, he would be booming right now.
For sure.
That's what I was gonna say too. Is just again, I wanted to draft Amari Cooper because it's Amari Cooper. I just didn't draft him because without Deshaun Watson actually being able to play for 11 weeks, they have nobody to really throw him the ball.
Exactly.
Brissett's not going to get it to him.
Deshaun hasn't played, but even when he was playing, when he was at Houston, he's got an arm. He knows how to read the defense. He's a good passer, but Jacoby Brissett, he's been a backup for
forever,
I think, pretty much his whole career. But now he's starting. He doesn't have what it takes to be a starting quarterback.
No.
That's why he's been a backup. But
unfortunately, I'm going to see Amari on this list quite frequently this year. So, moving on, Darnell Mooney. He did really well last year for the Bears, right? Well, 1.8 fantasy points. That's about as pitiful as it gets, aside from a 0 from Devonte Smith, right?
Yeah.
1.8 fantasy points. Again, I'm not going to hold him on this list, being this next week, because it was a monsoon that they played in. So it was tremendously hard for Justin Fields to throw the ball. I'm not going to say much about it. He has to be on this list because he got 1.8 fantasy points. But it's the same type of thing. Like Deebo Samuel still got almost 13 points, being the fact of because he rushed. If it was just in terms of receiving, he'd be on this list too. So I wouldn't hold Darnell Mooney down too much right now.
Yep.
So
next we have DJ Moore with 8 points. My thing with DJ is, they got Baker, new quarterback in Carolina.
CMC they have to juggle with there too.
Yep. So, with CMC, having a new quarterback, I feel like the connection isn't there just yet. But once that connection gets there, I feel like DJ is going to be wide receiver 1 for Baker.
Oh, 100%.
So he's gonna skyrocket once that connection gets there more.
Somebody that I would have figured would have been on this list, who is actually the flipped, right? DJ's on this list. Robbie Anderson has over 20 points. This is gonna be something I'm gonna be interested in seeing a little bit, right? Because Robbie Anderson last year was horrible, absolutely god awful. But then he signed at the beginning of last year. He signed a 2-year deal for I think it was $29 million or something like that. Might even been more. So they still want to use him, right? I feel like it's going to be a flip-flop. We're either going to have DJ Moore on here or we're going to have Robbie Anderson on here each week. And it's going to just be whoever Baker gets the connection to. Week 1, it was Robbie Anderson. Next week, I wouldn't be surprised if it was flip-flopped.
Yep.
So, I mean, not too bad from DJ Moore. 8 points coming out of the gate. Not horrible. Definitely want to see him turn that around, though.
Yep.
So, and Travis Etienne, he's the next one on here, right? He had 8.5 fantasy points. It's something that I said about Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers. It's the same situation with Etienne and James Robinson, right? James Robinson had a tremendous year last year. And it's the same situation. You can't just throw him out the window because he played tremendous last year. So you have to give him the value, right? He was just shy of 20 points this last week, and ETN goes for 8.5 points. James Robinson, I feel like, is the guy there until something happens. ETN will get some work, but where people drafted ETN, they are not happy with what's going to happen here. Same thing with Akers, right? They're both not going to do well. Moving forward here, comparably to Darrell Henderson and James Robinson.
Yeah, James Robinson, he's the vet there at Jags.
ETN's explosive. Okay,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but I feel like with just their offense that they have, they're going to rely a lot more on James Robinson because
Christian Kirk
being the vet. With Christian Kirk. So
they got Evan Ingram there now too.
So they're I feel like they're going to start relying more on their pass offense with the new additions that they got on the offseason and with Trevor Lawrence. But when it comes to the run game, I feel like they probably won't balance out snaps as much.
I feel like
James Robinson's definitely going to get most of the snaps.
Yep.
But I feel like Travis Etienne he'll work his way in there. I feel like he might be a little bit lower for, a few weeks.
Just at the end of the day, though, where people are drafted him, he was supposed to be getting at least 20 points, right?
Yeah.
So it's a scary situation if you drafted him. That's why I didn't draft him or Cam Akers. So
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
happy I avoided him. Next one, go ahead.
Next, we have DK Metcalf.
Oof.
So I feel like DK's thing is coming off a Super Bowl caliber receiver, or not receiver, quarterback like Russ, going to Geno, who's been a backup until this year.
Mm-hmm.
Geno's still looking for that connection with the guys.
Yep.
He hasn't made it like Russ has.
Surprising that I'm a Seahawks fan. I'm surprised that we beat Russell Wilson in in Monday Night Football. We beat him 17-16. But, DK with 8.6 fantasy points, DK is just so talented.
Mm-hmm.
And if they use DK like they use Deebo Samuel at the 49ers, DK would be a top 5 wide receiver. But it's weird to me that they just can't seem to figure out how to use DK that well. They walked away with a win, but DK moving forward, man. And that's why I traded away Zeke and DK for Deontay and Kareem Hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. It's so many question marks around that. I can see DK going out for a 30-point game, possibly next week, and then the following week have 5. Yeah. Like, it's the same situation, and it's the same thing with Tyler Lockett on the same team. You just don't know, and that's what I don't like about fantasy wide receivers that I would ever have, is I don't like the inconsistency. And,
for sure.
And it's going to be something that's going to be there for them.
Yeah, I feel like Geno Smith not having that connection, and then obviously Seahawks have solid running backs. So
Rashad Penny did well. He
Penny.
only finished with 8.7 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but he ran the ball pretty well. So I'm not too nervous about him. I think when Walker comes into the balance, I think again that'll be a toss up for both of them.
Good split for both of them. Like, obviously, Kenneth Walker didn't play.
Yep, he was out. So
yeah, he had I think he had a hernia or something.
Yep, that's what it was.
I mean, once he gets into the flow of playing with these guys, their running back split will be good. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't worry about the running backs ever being on here, but I feel like with the way Geno is not having connection with the receivers, I feel like the Seahawks might start relying more on their run game since they don't have Russ anymore. But I feel like if they still had Russ, DK wouldn't even be on this list at all.
Nope.
No Seahawk would be on this list.
Well, we saw it last year, when Russ was out. DK and Lockett, both, they weren't great starts.
Not at all.
And so moving forward, I'm going to say the same thing. They're not great starts. So
I would flex at best.
Flex at best.
DK
Agreed.
at flex. Yep.
Agreed. I had DK on my bench. I actually put Rashad Penny as my flex last. I feel like he just had more upside. And I think moving forward is the same thing. He'll have more upside.
Yeah.
Last one on this list. There's other ones we could have put on this list, but we could talk for days about it. So just some main names we're putting on here. The last one, we got Adam Thielen. Finishes with 6.6 fantasy points. Again, when you're getting overshadowed by Justin Jefferson, I honestly 6.6 isn't bad. But I wouldn't be surprised if moving forward Thielen gets more work, right? Because people are going to shadow Justin Jefferson. It's just a given because he's a stud.
Yeah.
So Thielen is going to get work. It's just a matter of when.
My take on that is with Kirk Cousins, everybody's like, oh, he's not a great quarterback. Kirk Cousins is a great quarterback. He was great at Michigan State. He was great when he started when Washington was still the Redskins.
Yep.
After Alex Smith got hurt, he took over Washington, and he's taken over the Vikings. He's turned the Vikings around. The Vikings used to be awful, and now they're solid.
Yep, they're solid.
They're not bad. I mean, they're not the best, but
they kind of wipe the floor with the Packers.
For sure, and usually it's the Packers leading.
Yep.
But with having Kirk Cousins, a great quarterback, but yeah, with Justin Jefferson is the deep threat there in Minnesota. He's going to be more of a deep threat than Adam Thielen will be. I feel like
100%. That's a given.
Yeah, once Jay Jettas, once he is covered in the deep game, they're going to rely on Adam Thielen for the short game, outs, slants, whatever it is.
He could be a Cooper Kupp if he gets the look. The looks. So,
yep.
I mean, I wouldn't expect him. He'll be on this list throughout the year, But it's just being overshadowed by Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to be that guy, kind of like Allen Robinson with Cooper Kupp.
Yep.
Right. And I didn't put Allen Robinson on here because I already talked about him. Last week because they played the first game, Thursday Night Football. So, but same type of situation there. We'll just kind of continue to watch out for that moving forward. So,
yeah, but
last segment we got here.
Week 2 predictions.
Week 2 predictions, baby. So, let's finish this out here. I'll roll through each one. You'll give me your pick first, then I'll go. So, we got the Patriots and the Steelers. We got.
I'm going to have to go with the Steelers.
Agreed. The Steelers, after beating the Bengals,
For sure.
definitely good. So the Patriots did not look good. I'm still waiting to see Bill Belichick do something with Mac Jones. Just honestly, the Patriots team's just not a great fantasy team at all. I would honestly throw the Patriots out completely. The backfield, Damian Harris was the guy. Then Ramondre Stevenson's getting looks. It's like it's too much by committee everywhere on that team.
Yeah.
So if I had to in a very deep league, Jacoby Myers is like the best start. But yeah, so Steelers we both got there. The Panthers and the Giants. The Giants surprised me. So I'm gonna let you go first. What pick are you taking?
I'm taking the Giants.
You're gonna take the Giants?
I'm taking the Giants.
After the Panthers week 1, I'm not too high on them. The Browns, I was anticipating the Panthers beating the Browns. Then the Browns beat them, so it was a close game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like overall the Panthers are better, so I'm going to take the Panthers here. But I want to be surprised if the Giants come out with a win again like they did last week.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising. They're just a very surprising team. And then the Jets and the Browns. Again, obviously that's anybody against the Jets, right? It could be any college football team would probably take them over the Jets, unfortunately. So I don't know. We'll see on here, but the Browns are gonna pummel the Jets in my opinion.
Sure.
So now you got the Colts and the Jags. So you got
the Colts really disappointed me last week
with that tie.
Yeah.
Right. They tied the Texans. So I'm in the same boat. I'm gonna take the Colts. I'll just say my pick first. But I don't know. It's a tough one. Now, the Colts aren't as good as I thought they were gonna be coming out. So
they got the offensive line. They got Matt Ryan. I'm gonna take the Colts because I feel like Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman are gonna start.
Hopefully, along with that connection, hopefully we got Jonathan Taylor performance
JT too.
Yeah. So the Jags, I wouldn't be surprised if they walked away with it though after last week's performance by the Colts. Sure. So. Then you got the Dolphins and the Ravens. You're a Ravens fan?
Yes, sir.
You're taking the Ravens?
Taking the Ravens.
I'm actually going to go on the flip side. I'm going to take the Dolphins, being the fact is their defense is not horrible. And they got some weapons, obviously, with Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. They got Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert in the backfield. They can both be dangerous. I don't know. It's a tough decision. I think it'll be close.
It is. I feel like the receiving is there for both of them because obviously the Dolphins, they got Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Mike Gesicki, underrated tight end. But then on the flip side, the Ravens got Devin Duvernay, which had a surprising week last week. Mm-hmm. Obviously Mark Andrews, top 3 tight end in the league. And then what was their rookie that they drafted?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Bateman did all right too.
Yeah,
right?
Rashad Bateman.
He's
the rookie that they drafted. And
I don't know. I feel like overall, I feel like the Dolphins are a little bit better in terms of their players.
Yeah.
I want to be surprised if your Ravens win, though. I'm gonna take the Dolphins, though, in a close one.
I'm going to have to go with my Ravens, and Lamar and Mark Andrews are going to carry that.
Yep. The running back situation in the Ravens is still a no-start in fantasy.
Yep. So that's why they've been relying on their pass game. Like, they got the threats, obviously.
They got some speedsters.
Expand on this a little bit. There was one of Devin Duvernay's touchdowns against the Jets last week I saw the stats on it. I think it was less than 10% of a completion percentage.
And he caught it.
And he caught it for the touchdown. Lamar's angle that he threw it at, it was insane. It was ridiculous to see the stats on that passing touchdown.
Yeah, I think Lamar, it's cool to look at that
top-tier quarterback, but I got Ravens all day.
All right. The Bucs and the Saints. One thing before you pick, You should know the last 7 times that the Saints and the Bucks have squared off, the Saints have won. I wasn't impressed with Tom Brady last week. The Bucks, besides him, I was impressed with. So I'm gonna actually take the Bucks over the Saints.
See, my thing with the Saints is they got,
They got some weapons.
they got the weapons, but Michael Thomas is just starting to come back. Kamara's he's a toss up right now. They got Amari.
Mm-hmm.
He's fresh to the Saints. Jameis Winston's coming on his first time starting for them. Not like first time starting for them.
Yep.
But he's new to the starting quarterbacks, and you got him against the vet, the GOAT, Tom Brady. It's tough to say, but I think I'm gonna have to go with my gut, and I'm sticking with the Bucks.
Yep. No, I agree. I think this is a flip year. I can't believe that I looked at that stat line and saw that last 7 times they beat them. So, pretty impressive. I want to be surprised if the Saints walk away with it. The Saints are a better team than what they look like.
For sure.
So we'll see. If you take a deeper look, they definitely look better. But we both got the Bucks there. Now the Commanders versus the Lions. I picked the Commanders last week. Landon thought I was stupid for it. They did win against the Jags.
Yep.
I think the Commanders are underrated. Okay. One guy that we didn't talk about that I probably should have put on there is Antonio Gibson. Had a really good game, over 20 fantasy points. Same thing with a lot of the wide receivers there. I talked about Curtis Samuel. I picked him up in every single one of our leagues. Did really well. Terry McLaurin was actually the 3rd best in terms. Curtis was number 2. Dotson, the rookie there, scored the most fantasy points. So I'd say the Commanders have a good chance of beating the Lions. The Lions played, pretty good against an Eagles team, though. So this is one of those times where I'm going to take a step back and say the Lions are going to win. What do you think?
Honestly, the Commanders' defense, solid. They got a solid defense. I feel like if the Lions' offensive line can stop Chase, they have a chance to hit, Amon-Ra and DJ.
And Swift will have a good game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So,
Swift will have a very good game again. Even Jamal Williams will have a great game.
What are your thoughts? Who do you got?
I'm going to go with what a lot of people have been saying. It's surprising. The Lions are the favorite by 1.5 points. Mm-hmm. So I'm going with, hometown heroes. Not very hometowny heroes, but I'm going with the Lions.
All right, we both have the Lions. That's one of the first times I think we could actually say that we would both have the Lions.
Yes.
But it'll be a close one. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington comes out with it either. So, but yeah, then the 49ers and the Seahawks. It was tough to evaluate the Niners last week, right? And the Seahawks I'm surprised we beat the Broncos. They're my team, and I had them losing last week. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say the Seahawks are gonna win back-to-back weeks. We're gonna start 2-0, baby. I don't know. I was impressed with us beating. I was impressed with our defense against Russell Wilson. So I'm taking my Seahawks.
I'm probably going to have to agree with you on the Seahawks. Trey Lance hasn't looked, well, obviously it was his first start last week.
The monsoon's a hard thing,
but
so
I feel like being a rookie and sitting behind a vet for a year, it's hard to take right over and start the next year. But so that's where I'm at with the 49ers. I'm going Seahawks.
I love it. Next one, the Falcons and the Rams. I think the Rams have a bounce back week against the Falcons. It'll be tougher than I anticipate, probably, because the Falcons are a tough team. Marcus Mariota starting there, shout out him. But I'm gonna take the Rams.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. The Rams had an awful first week, but that's because the Bills are out for blood. The Bills want that Super Bowl.
They're in it. I already picked them to be in the Super Bowl, 100%.
Yep. But yeah, I'm going Rams. Cooper Kupp Stafford connection is immaculate.
Yep, always, and will forever be. Cardinals and the Raiders are the next one. I picked the Cardinals to beat the Chiefs last week. It was a stupid prediction by me. But the Cardinals, they're a really good team, and they didn't look like it last week. Again, and then you look on the flip side, the Raiders with Devonte Adams, man, and they didn't win last week either. We got two 0-1 teams that I think both have a really good chance of making the playoffs push this year. So I don't know. It's gonna be a tough one, but I don't know if they come out and play how they're supposed to. I'm gonna take the Cardinals this week.
Yeah, that's another tough decision. It's like Kyler Murray, great quarterback. He's mobile. They got a solid backfield.
It's really hard, and I'm taking the Cardinals again back-to-back weeks. If they disappoint me back-to-back weeks, I'm not taking them again. But I don't know who you got. Who you got? Go with your gut on these.
I'm gonna have to go with those Raiders.
Yeah, I'm support of the Raiders this year. So
yeah,
if Devonte Adams goes off for 3 touchdowns in this game, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Right.
So you got the Raiders, huh?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
I'm taking the Cards. Well, next one, we got the Texans and the Broncos. Again, surprised that the Texans even tied the Colts last week.
Right.
Insane to me. The Broncos disappointed, if you were a Broncos fan, I would say, against my Seahawks. I think they have a bounce-back week and beat the Texans, though.
Yep, I got the Bronx.
Okay, good. And I think Russell Wilson, still a great quarterback.
Him and Jerry Jeudy are starting to build that connection. Like, Jerry Jeudy had a pretty good fantasy week last week. So
100%.
I feel like that's just going to go up and up and up for both of them.
Yep. And then the Bengals and the Cowboys.
Bengals.
It's not even a question mark, right? I mean, the Bengals lost to the Steelers. I didn't anticipate. But, again, the Cowboys aren't good this year.
The Cowboys, they don't have Dak for a while. So
it's just throw the Cowboys out the window.
Yeah.
One that I would question right now is who would I pick between the Cowboys and the Jets, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
So that's really saying something. So we both got the Bengals there. And now we got Sunday Night Football this week is the Bears and the Packers. Not both teams that didn't look good at all in their first week, even though the Bears beat the 49ers.
The Bears did come back from, 14-0, 13-0?
Something like
win
that.
19, put up 19 unanswered. The
Yep.
Packers looked awful. They looked horrible.
So who you taking here? That's the question.
Surprisingly, I am going to go with the Bears.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a flip on that, and I'm gonna say the Packers are gonna figure it out a little bit, at least better than they did.
Mom's calling me.
They're gonna figure it out a little bit better than they did last week. I mean, it was the same thing last year, right?
Yeah.
The Packers, Aaron Rodgers in general didn't play good week 1, and then he bounced back and won MVP again last year. I don't think he'll win MVP this year, but I think he's gonna bounce back this week. So I got the Packers beating the Bears. You got the Bears. So that'd be an interesting game. Two that I wouldn't really want to see in Sunday Night Football.
Right.
But and then we're back to 2 Monday night games to finish out, and we got actually some pretty good matchups. So we got the Titans and the Bills in Monday Night Football. Again, Bills, dude. Bills Mafia is real. I'm not a Bills fan, but I am a Bills fan,
Yeah.
So Josh Allen's stout. I think we'll see if Derrick Henry can have a bounce back week against a tough Bills defense. It'll be tough. So, but I got the Bills.
Yep, for sure.
And then the last game, Monday Night Football Part 2, is the Vikings and the Eagles, and that's a tough one. They're both really good teams this year. It is a really tough one. I'm going to take the Vikings.
I'm not sure. That's going to be a great game.
It really is. It really is. I think both of those games are going to be pretty good. So,
honestly, I'm going to go with the Vikings too.
Yeah.
Because everybody's been sleeping on Kirk Cousins, but now he's got,
both of those teams have really good potential moving forward.
They do. But
both 1-0. So, I don't know. You got the Vikes, huh?
I'm taking the Vikes. They are going to lead this year.
I agree. All right, guys. Well, that puts a cap to Season 2, Episode 5 of Locked In Podcast. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube, SirSageYT, or thank you guys for listening on Locked In Podcast on Apple Podcasts. Jordan, thank you for joining. First one he's been on since episode 1, so he's got to keep coming back here. We'll keep touching on it, see how our predictions do for this week. So, thank you for joining.
Yes, sir.
Have a great one as always, guys. Peace.